Today we're going to talk about the crazy things happening in the car industry at the moment in the world. Let's go over them one by one. VW set for the biggest strikes for 6 years in Germany, 120,000 workers walking out, and that's because of huge cuts they're making to the workforce. VW essentially inching towards bankruptcy. There is no light in sight. They have to make these cuts. Things are going radically wrong. We'll speak about that in a second. Second one, Nissan, the biggest. This is the biggest one. They are within 12 months of bankruptcy. Renault is selling their entire 36% stake. Nissan itself is selling its stake in Mitsubishi in order to get cash. Operating profit plummeted 99% last year, and it's going to be in losses this year for sure. And so Nissan is the number one outlier because it's too small. It doesn't have the breadth of the other car makers. Then we've got obviously Ford in absolute disaster. Its share price is now below 1998 levels. They're trading on a 2 PE ratio, which is nothing. But at least GE and Ford are protected in America from huge tariffs on Chinese EVs and the fact that the majority of Americans, they prefer pickup trucks, which is that's their bread and butter. So they're very good in America. They're okay. At least they're contained there. The European manufacturers, yesterday with Stellantis, which lost 7 billion, wiped off its share price, and the CEO resigning as well because they're going to face huge cuts in profits. Armageddon, basically across the board, with all the car companies. And this is because of one thing. China, that is the answer. So it's not just China. They can't sell in China anymore. They're basically the Chinese car companies in China become so good. BYD, XPeng, all of them, they've become so good, so cheap, and offering such good offerings that they literally can't compete anymore. The foreign brands cannot compete in China, and so they are being wiped out. So they cannot sell. Now, China was their growth engine. It was a growth engine for all the car companies, BMW, VW, Toyota, all of them were making their profits in China. That's where it was coming from. And now that's basically being decimated. That's going away. The second thing is obviously the EV revolution, which has not picked up that much steam. But it's the fact that the Chinese EVs are wiping the floor with any offerings these car companies are giving. Oh, and I did forget Jaguar, and now going completely woke and discontinuing any new lines in 2025. And their woke rebrand, that's desperation. That's basically when a car company comes desperate, it goes radical. That's what's happened to Jaguar. It's gone completely radical because they've lost 70% of sales in the US, and they're just being wiped out into oblivion. So that's what's happening with them. Now, back to what I was talking about regarding China. So China's EVs are wiping the floor. What's happened? The Americans had to raise 100% tariffs on them. The EU this week, 35% tariffs. And there's nothing you can't, even with those tariffs, you're still not going to be able to compete with them because their price offering is so good. All the EVs batteries come from China, right? All of them. Doesn't matter if you're VW or Ford or whatever. They all come from China. Number two, there's no appetite anyway in Western markets for EVs yet. They have, all these countries now have onerous net zero targets. So for instance, the UK's this year is 22%, which it won't meet. Currently, petrol cars are being rationed. So if you go, we're in December now, you go for a petrol car, you won't be able to buy one. They're basically saying you cannot get one. That's how bad it is, because if they sell it, they have to pay £15,000 or 15,000 euros in the EU for every car they sell above that. So they're basically being communist restricted. That is what's happened. This net zero is communism. And just like communism made everyone poor and penniless, that's what's happening here. So what did they do? The car companies, they doubled the price of their cars. And that's why we've also had car prices in the last 4 years since Corona essentially double, right? So because they've needed this huge buffer to make a lot of profit in order to fund the loss-making EV ventures they were all doing. So like the Lightning F-150 in America, no one's buying it, basically it is not being sold. cancelled. GM tried to say they were by 2025 going to have 30 models, EV models. They've got 3. It's just not manifested for them, but they've spent a lot of money on that. How did they get their money? They doubled the price of their ICE vehicles. So now people are like, well, I can't buy petrol cars because they're double the price. EVs are garbage because basically they lose all their money in a second-hand market. They're worthless second-hand, right? Essentially, after 10 years, you can't sell them. There's no buyers. Even a dealership won't take them. There's no buyers. So they don't know what to do. So people are basically dragging out their current cars longer and longer. And that's what we've seen. The average age of cars in the UK has gone up quite significantly in the last few years because people don't want to give up that perfectly good car and spend double for a new ICE or get an EV, which is essentially useless. And the car sellers, the car dealerships can't sell you petrol cars either because of these net zero targets. So it's Armageddon in the car industry at the moment. The governments don't seem to be backing down their insane net zero psychotic because obviously they're all globalist WEF puppets. They're not really governments. You didn't vote anyone in. It's all controlled from above. So there's no one there. Obviously Trump is the outlier and he will totally get rid of this net zero garbage in America. And so anyone focused with America could actually thrive. But anywhere else, there is no hope. American car sales hugely down from 4 years ago. I think it was 17 million units in 2019, and now they're at 14 million per year. So it's really bad there. It's really, really bad because it's much less. Even though you got a bigger population, you're selling less cars because they've doubled in price, and these EVs are garbage. They're a terrible replacement for actual cars. So there we go. So that is the status at the moment. Literally every car company is facing bankruptcy in a level going from Nissan being the number one worse to all the Chinese manufacturers doing very well. They're selling extremely well. They're penetrating markets. They're going all over the place with a quality product. They're taking over all Asian sales, so Thailand, Vietnam, all of those are all going now to Chinese EVs. All the taxis in Thailand are now Chinese EVs. Cheap, good quality. Why not? Which is what EVs were meant to be, right? Essentially. But that's not happening with other areas. Looking at the top tier, which is Toyota, they don't offer any EVs, really. They don't offer any real EV models. But they seem to be doing okay because they are obviously the reliable ICE models that people are jumping for, and they didn't pump their price so high because they didn't need to fund this EV rubbish in their own lineup. So therefore, they're still cheap. They're still offering reliable cars, and so therefore they're doing okay. But everyone else, decimation on different levels. Chinese doing very, very well. Tesla really treading water, not doing that amazingly, but at least selling more every month. Not so much, but they are. And then you've got basically got everyone else who are losing sales, and their profits are down, and they're going to face bankruptcy. So thank you, net zero. Thank you, woke communist stupidity, for a goal that's elusive and useless. And well done, China. You're smashing it. You've beaten them at their own woke game. Good for you.